Good evening. This is Defacto Review with me, Jargal Saikhan. Today's topics are the government fights inflation. Can it succeed? Ukraine war shadows coming to Mongolia stronger. QSC concessions agreement is terminated by the government of Mongolia. These are three topics. Would like to share with you my opinion for this week. So first, about the government fight with inflation. The cabinet of government of Mongolia on April 15th have made extraordinary sessions and agreed for the following. Based on this decision is based on student demonstrations request or demand a week earlier. They have analyzed their demand, and there are 15 demands and 200 proposals for the government, and 74% of all these proposals and demands are about price increase complaint, and then 14% is about cutting unnecessary expenses of the budget, and 12% only to raise salaries. So the Prime Minister said that we need to have non-standard measure because it's a very irregular time. So the government made decisions to control the price for major consuming items, and they have proposed some law, and the Parliament approved that law on that day of April 15th. So what they have agreed, first of all, they will support fuel importers. Mongolia is 100% dependent on Russia on fuel, and there are some 3 or so dozen companies who bring oil from Russia. The government is going to spend $100 million for that, and Mongol Bank and the government of Mongolia will have a legal possibility to limit the price. Because the fuel price is expected to be raised by 1,000 tugriks due to international situations, and also exchange rate is changing. And A92, the most used gasoline in Mongolia, is now cost 1,390, but it looks like it will be close about 2,400. And the local companies will be receiving discounted interest loan, and it will be also auctioned for the certain conditions, so the government total spend $100 million on that. Second work is to control on meat and flour price. The government will buy reserve wheat from companies from last year, and the cabinet also had proposed draft law to decrease for 5% the import tax for rice, sugar, and frying oil to the end of this year, 2022. The third measure is 1 trillion MNT soft loan will be issued to domestic food producers and companies that are growing vegetables, planting wheat, and building storages. These interest discounts will be subsidized by the government, and that law is now with the Parliament as well. The fourth measure is, there is also a draft law which was approved. State-owned enterprises, some positions like deputy directors and unnecessary staffs will be limited by this law. Also, the government organizations will be forbidden of using large-size vehicles in cities. When needed, they will rent a car from a government garage, and they have also encouraged public officers to use public transport and taxi. And there will be costs cutting for such items like phone costs, receptions, traveling by only economic class in the flights, and also, whenever possible, to prefer national airlines. Also interesting cutting is not to use uniforms, except police, army, and the state special agency staffs. Customs, social insurance officers who are using now, still used to have uniforms, will be stopped. And the number 5, there is a need of 21 trillion MNT for financing the social insurance fund for normal functioning, but it is not feasible these days. So that's why they will also return 50% of employees' social insurance payments back to the end of this year. It's against the complaint that too much social insurance payment makes a lot of unemployment. So this clearly shows that the government of Mongolia is going to limit prices either by regulations or by laws. But how long it can be done? Can it be done at all? Because previous experiences show that at the end, if there is very strict price control, the goods, services will disappear simply. So let's see what will happen in this case. In any case, it will increase certainly government debt, since the government has no space in a budget to do this all programs. So probably it's going to issue more domestic debt through the bond, etc. Today's second topic is around Ukraine war shadows on Mongolia. Mongolia got some attention recently amidst Ukraine war's further escalation these days. As Mongolia is a democratic country where freedom of speech is guaranteed by the constitutions, the public needs to hear all positions, all sides' concerns. And that's what is a European Union embassy and other partner countries' embassies took the point, as they have European Union and its partner countries, America, Canada. All the ambassadors of these countries have made a press conference in order to give their views on what's happening in Ukraine to Mongolian public. And they have also, each country was giving some information at this press conference about what each individual country is doing. Also, European Union is doing in regards to war in Ukraine. EU Ambassador Axel Nikaz said that European Union will continue the largest sanctions isolating Russia, and it will continue to provide humanitarian assistance to Ukraine and support Ukraine's armed forces. French ambassador have highlighted that price hikes for energy and these Ukrainian tensions are coming strictly impacting on the countries like Mongolia. Canada is announcing that what they are doing for Ukrainians and providing certain. The Canadian ambassador said that there is a serious violation of fundamental human rights in Ukraine. Canada has provided $45 million in humanitarian help to Ukraine. Poland ambassador said that Poland have received the largest amount of refugees, so far 2.7 million to be exact, to Poland from Ukraine refugees, mostly women and children. And also Bulgarian embassy also said that they have provided 75 Ukrainian refugees with home and spent $185,000. And German embassy said that Russia is disrupting the international peace talks by distorting the reality of the war. Overall, European Union ambassadors have explained to Mongolian public what's exactly happening from their perspective. At the same time, also there are some news coming, fake news, if we can say, from Russia about Mongolia in connection with the Ukraine. Statement by Kosachev, vice chair of the Council of Federation of Russia, said recently, a few days ago, that the Russian, in his interview to a Russian federal news agency, that there is information, though he did not mention the source. There is information that U.S. entered into negotiations with government of Mongolia about allocation of the biolab on its territory. Then next day, there is another Russian well-known academician announcing. He is the academician of the military science of Russian Federation, Sergei Sotakov. He said that Pentagon is trying to get permission for biolab for producing of biogenetic weapon against China. These are groundless and fake information for distracting Mongolian relations with our third neighbors and largest economic partner and southern neighbor. That's what is my take on these two events connecting Mongolia with what's happening in Ukraine. Our third topic is about corruption fight by the government. This time, the government had terminated the contract of concession agreement with QSC. QSC is the company belonged to the owner of Trade and Development Bank, Ulaanbaatar Bank, Mr. Erdogan, and they have made concession agreement through mining and metallurgy complex project implementation. And that agreement was signed in 2014 in April, and this agreement was terminated now after 8 years, also in April 13, now 2022. What happened was QSC is a company that got kind of privatized Darkhan metallurgy plant, which was built by Japanese 30 years ago, and this plant is for processing waste metal, secondary metal, and also this plant has got a license for the largest ore mine, iron ore mine in the northern part of Mongolia, in Silingamik. They have agreed tons of things in this agreement, and many of them have not been done for last 4 years. For example, they have done some railways, electric transmission lines, auto roads, and some part of plants. But though they have been selling iron ore to China, they have not been completed the processing plant promised under this concession agreement. And the plant is done, but the processing is not going on because they had no money, as they said. And also they got a huge amount of 91 million US dollar from Development Bank of Mongolia. And for that money, they are supposed to complete several things. Some of them have completed. But what is interesting is the railroad for 34 kilometers connecting that Silinga iron ore deposit to the main railroad, 34 kilometer railroad was constructed, used, but instead of the conditions of building, operating, and transferring to the state, they have suddenly changed the agreement, and instead of operating, they have been building and transferring immediately to the government, and for which price they have agreed to give 34 kilometers road for 112 million US dollar. And 90 million of them, they got it because it was already in the budget. But however, the similar length of railway construction could be 5 times less. That's the complaint by the government. And there are several other cases they have not completed as they have agreed. That's why the government have cancelled this agreement. Though as of yesterday, they sued back the government of Mongolia because they said that the government had officially announced that they will not be able to provide energy to this new plant. That's the reason why they have not been completing. So let's see, the fight is going on, and we will see what will happen next time. But however, this case is a particular case where the government is showing its commitment to combat corruption, in particular around bad non-performing loans of Development Bank of Mongolia, which mostly gone through the political connections. So these are three news topics I would like to share my opinion on, and see you, we will do it in a week from now, and see you next week.